Welcome to this webinar on how to read your assigned applications. This will be a review for returning examiners, although we should all be looking for more effective ways to examine applications. This webinar will be especially valuable for new examiners who are facing that first application to review and wondering, how do I make the best use of my time? And how do I ensure that I'm helping develop a valuable feedback report for the applicant? A quick overview of today's webinar. We're going to identify some various ways that examiners review an application. We're going to give some hints on how to identify important information in the application that will help you identify value-added strengths and opportunities for improvement. We're going to share some best practices for you to consider as you get ready to examine an application. Let's start with an overview of the application. The applicant should be telling us a story of how they operate. The organizational profile describes who they are and what's most important to them. The organizational profile is the basis for the key factors that you will develop. The process categories describe what the applicant does, its processes, how they do it, and how they improve. The results category demonstrates the applicant's performance. What is their performance across a broad set of results? So that's how you should be viewing the application, an integrated story that is a sort of management document that describes how the applicant operates. As you read the application, you're going to want to keep these basics of an assessment in mind. For categories 1 through 6, the process categories, you're going to be looking at 4 areas. Approach, the process that the applicant uses to meet requirements. Deployment, the extent that the process is implemented, many times supported by describing who and when or how the process is implemented. Learning, evaluation and improvement. Does the applicant describe how they have evaluated and improved their processes over time? And integration. Are the various parts of the application connected to others? For instance, do the key organizational performance measures described in Category 4, Measurement, Analysis, and Knowledge Management, align with the strategic objectives and goals described in Category 2, Strategy? For Category 7, Results, you'll be looking for the following. LE, Levels, is the applicant's current performance levels reported? T, Trends, is the applicant's performance getting better over time? C, Comparisons, does the applicant provide relevant comparative data to assess their relative performance? And I, Integration or importance, are the results presented important measures? Are they the results we expected to see? These elements are further described in another webinar. So let's get into how you actually review the application. First of all, realize that every examiner is going to have a different method to review the application. You will hear several methods from different examiners, but find the method that works best for you. Here's Paul's recommended approach. It has evolved over his many years as an examiner and continues to be updated as he reviews applications. First, print out the application. Most people find working with a hard copy of the application works best. If you prefer to review electronically, that's fine too, but using the hard copy lets you mark up the application. Start with the organizational profile. We call it the OP. Remember that the OP helps you understand who the applicant is and what's important to them. It sets the context for what you're going to read. Then go back and scan categories 1 through 6, the process categories. This gives you a sense of whether the applicant is going to provide process-focused descriptions of how they operate, or if they're going to just provide anecdotal stories. Also, start developing your table of expected results, or TOER, as you read the organizational profile and process categories. Then, go back to the organizational profile and develop the key factors. These key factors will help you fully assess the application and identify strengths and opportunities for improvement. Keep those key factors next to you as you review the process categories, categories 1 through 6. That way, you can check what's important to the applicant as you review their application. For instance, when reading item 3.2 about customer engagement, look at the key factor for who the applicant has identified as their customer groups and what the requirements are for those groups. You should start populating the table of expected results to be sure that when you review Category 7 results, you'll know whether they are reporting what is important to the applicant. Finally, read and mark up Category 7, the results category. This gives you an overview of overall performance as well as whether a good set of results is provided and if the application addresses what you've identified in the table of expected results. Some best practices that examiners use. As they review the application with the key factors next to them, some examiners keep notes in the margin, an A when they see an approach described, a D when they see evidence of deployment, and so on. They also put an R in the margin when they read something that would lead them to expect a result in Category 7. For instance, they describe the importance of reducing falls in Category 6, operations. They would put an R 7.1 in the margin to be sure to look for a falls result in 7.1 healthcare results. Other examiners use highlighters to accomplish the same thing. Highlight parts of the application to identify ADLI and results. This can also be done with an electronic version of the application. Some examiners develop their table of expected results that you will hear referred to as a TOR as they develop the application. Others just put the R in the margin as they review the application, then come back and transfer those expected results into the TOR. Examiners tend to keep the key factors close by to ensure relevance of the review to what the applicant has identified as being important. Experienced examiners tend to keep the applicant's glossary or acronym page close by to keep from having to keep flipping back to it to understand what an acronym stands for. I tend to use the acronym page as my bookmark in the application. That way I can quickly identify what an acronym stands for, and applicants tend to use a lot of acronyms. So, let's summarize. Although there are elements of review that are required in one form or another, there is no prescribed best way to review an application. If you're a new examiner, try some of the identified practices and find what works best for you. Don't hesitate to ask fellow team members for advice. You will find that experienced examiners are more than willing to share what works for them. For experienced examiners, don't hesitate to try something new. We all look for ways to do two things. 1, reduce the time it takes to review an application, and 2, increase the value of the application review in developing the feedback report. Thanks for your time today. We look forward to seeing you at virtual training. Please email either Mike or Paul if you have any questions.